Welcome and thank you for tuning into this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. I am your host, Andrea, also known as the Successful Diva, and I am so grateful that you've made the decision to meet me here. It's because of you. It's because of your viewership, your subscription, all of those things that makes this platform be what it is designed to be and keep me encouraged to keep doing the things that I aim to do, which is bring issues, topics, and those things that are relevant that you need to make decisions upon. I aim to bring those right into your peripheral view, not just your, outside of all of it. I want it right here, center stage, so that you are able and you're aware of what has to be decided upon. And so today we are going to have the age conversation. That's that conversation that at some point in our lives, we are faced with the fact that we're older than where we were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. But in politics, this seems to be taboo. And today we're going to have that conversation. On August 13th, 2025, I aired an episode titled PPP. PPP stood for and stands for, in my episode, the People Powered Project 2029. Did not refer to the Paycheck Protection Program introduced during COVID-19. No, I wanted the attention brought to those candidates who are seeking our vote, your vote, my vote. I want people-powered candidates, people-powered, people-focused. Anything relating to people is who candidates should be focused on. And somehow, some way in this climate, we have gone to the other end of the spectrum. Many in Congress, local, state, federal levels, power, corruption, and special interests have taken front seat over the needs of people. And so if you missed the episode called PPP, People Powered Project 2029, hence the name, please be sure that you go back, watch it, listen to it. The link to that episode is in the show notes. I encourage you that you see, because it's in that episode that I name 10 agenda items that could be addressed with a people-focused project. And so on this channel, you can view that episode and all of those agenda items by clicking the link. It's in the show notes. And be sure you watch it, because these are things that I think soon as we get people with good common sense that, again, focused on people back into the levers of power and running in our legislative offices, could possibly help this country begin the wheels of turning things around. It won't happen overnight, but we've got to get the right people who will focus on people once they get to office. So let me say this. You may not be aware that there is statistical data that supports U.S. Congress term limits. There's actual data. A 2023 Pew Research Center survey found that 82% of Republicans and 76% of Democrats believe that age limits for federally elected officials are appropriate. Think about that. Age limits are appropriate for elected officials. With such staggering support of age limits in Congress, why did it take this young man by the name of David Hogg to shine a spotlight on the matter when today's political climate unquestionably calls for a different approach to leadership? Unquestionably calls for a different approach to leadership. Currently, 24 members of Congress are 80 years or older, and more than half of them are running for re-election. The age conversation was not well received when David Hogg, a former co-vice chairman of the Democratic National Committee, began promoting the idea of younger primary challengers in future elections. Just a little context on David. David is a survivor of the Stoneman Douglas High School shooting in Parkland, Florida. Many of you, I'm sure by now, already are aware of that fact. But he rose to prominence during the gun violence protests in 2018, and he co-founded a grassroots organization called Leaders We Deserve. The organization is dedicated to electing young progressives to Congress and state legislatures, shall I say. Let me say that again. That organization is dedicated to electing young progressives to Congress and state legislatures across the country. And the purpose of electing young people shines a direct spotlight on those who have been in Congress and state legislatures for decades. Let me repeat the stat that I said just a few moments ago. 24 members of Congress are 80 years or older, and more than half of them are running for re-election. We're going to take a look at that in a minute. But let's talk about the age conversation, because David Hogg put this conversation at center stage. Practically from the onset of his election to become co-vice chair of the DNC, he made it clear that his goal was to see younger primary challengers take on the established incumbents within the Democratic Party. And here's a quote. I want to quote him directly from the website Leaders We Deserve. Today's party politics has an unwritten rule. If you win a seat, it's yours for life. No one serious in your party will challenge you. That is a culture that we have to break. Now, many of us can debate back and forth, including me. I've done some of this as to how David Hogg went about doing that, in becoming the co-vice chair in the position that he held. There are some, obviously staunch supporters and those against how and why he should have done what he's done to put primary challengers in place while holding that co-vice chair position. But that being said, there is no doubt the age conversation came square into view. And Leaders We Deserved launched a $20 million investment to usher in a new generation of Democrats. That brings me back to what I stated earlier. I'm going to keep saying it. 24 members of Congress are 80 years or older, and more than half of them are running for re-election. At the start of this current 119th Congress, the average age was 58.9. Basically 59 years old, average age 59. And that represents statistically the third oldest Congress in U.S. history. That's according to an NBC News analysis. So just to give you a little context, how we get to that average age of just about 59 years old, to serve in the House, the U.S. House of Representatives, a member must be at least 25 years old, and a senator must be at least 30. So why are we having this age conversation? Because if the average age is 59, that means almost, if you start at 25, you've served 2.5 almost decades, 20 plus years before we get to today's current average age, even more. And so that brings back to what David Hogg has intended, which is to bring the age conversation into view. So when did the thought and excitement of retiring at age 65 fade? When did that fade? Let's take a look at some of Congress's eldest currently. You see the list. I don't want to take the time really to read it, but there's Chuck Grassley. I'll highlight at the top. In Iowa, senator. His term does not end until 2025, unless for some reason God sees fit to do something sooner than that. But here's where we are. He's 92. Term ends 2029. You do the math. We are in 2026. Jim Clyburn, as you see, I've highlighted, he actually has already declared that he plans to run for re-election in 2026 at the age of 86. Bernie Sanders, Angus King. Moving on, here are Congress's eldest running for re-election. There's the list. Top of the list, Eleanor Holmes Norton from the DC area, 87, all the way down to Virginia Fox, North Carolina at 83. These persons are running for re-election, and you see the age range there of where they are, 87 all the way down to 83. And then here are more coming down to 81. David Scott in Georgia, Congress's eldest in the 80s, age 80, running for re-election. And then we have those who are not seeking re-election. Steny Hoyer, who's already made the decision out of Maryland at age 87. He will not run, all the way down to Bonnie Watson Coleman in New Jersey, age 81, who will not be running. And then there's right at the top, second from the top, Nancy Pelosi, who probably was one of the first ones, I think, to come out and say she was not running in the upcoming election. She's 86. So you'll see there are not many, if at all, that I've listed here outside of the 80s and as high as the 90s plus with Chuck Grassley in Iowa. So I'll ask this question again, when did the thought and excitement of retiring at age 65, when did that fade? Why is it that so many members of the so-called silent generation, that's that generation I just spanned on the screen, ages 90 all the way to 81, that silent generation, when did they decide that they seemingly did not want to step aside and pave the way for younger leaders to usher in fresh ideas? Seemingly, when incumbents can run effectively, unopposed, and or under opposed for so long, they really have no incentive to leave. It's that mindset that David Hogg has interrupted by thrusting the age and a new generation of leaders into the conversation. That's where we are, and that's the conversation that, as difficult as it may be, that we should want to have, because without fresh ideas and without a new way to handle new levels of administration, and by gosh, this administration has tested every nuance of the Constitution and some, this is the conversation that has to happen even in its most uncomfortable state. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Evidently You're Unaware. The age conversation is nothing new. Even before President Joe Biden was pressured, mostly by his own party, to drop out of the 2024 presidential election because of his age, voters had been calling for a generational change in Congress. It's like my grandmother and mother once said, "Don't wear out your welcome." The silent generation may believe that they have more work to do, but maybe, just maybe, that work is simply to impart wisdom to a new generation who are daring to step into the political arena. Let us not forget the 34-count convicted felon is 79 years old, soon to be 80 himself in June of this year, 2026, and 77,303,573 people did not disqualify him on that basis. And here we are, still waiting on the price of eggs to decline. Email me, Andrea@strategicblueprint.info, comment, and or subscribe. Certainly, subscribe, help me build this platform at Evidently You're Unaware on YouTube, and follow me on Blue Sky at thesuccessfuldiva.bsky.social, and follow the podcast on TikTok at BYU Podcast.